Living Your Authentic Life. I'm Aidan.
And I'm Emma.
And today we are talking a bit about integrity and the importance of integrity when living an authentic life. And I guess also through that, just figuring out what your values are so that you can kind of maintain some integrity.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is really important to understand what your values are as a starting point. But I know that when, and I think being in like secondary school, for example, or high school, as you Americans say,
High school.
I think that's one of the prime times that you don't stick.
Oh,
Most
absolutely.
people don't stick to their values because you want to fit in, right?
Yeah.
But I think because of social media and everything is in the public eye nowadays, I think there's potentially much more pressure on people to act or behave in a certain way, or I don't know, like go along with things in order to fit in.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like I'm seeing it a lot in the workspace, which is not what I anticipated. Seeing that kind of, I guess, cliquey behavior in corporate. Not necessarily in a negative way either. Like, it's not malicious, but I think it's subconscious that people are just naturally, because it's what social media is dictating and what they're kind of used to from high school. I also work with a bunch of younger people who are either straight out of high school or fresh out of uni.
So they'd still probably be in that space, right?
Yeah.
Because I do think, I mean, one thing that moving to the other side of the world at 18 gave me, I think, was the freedom to really figure out who I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And that's not about faking it. It's about no one was around that knew me, so no one was around to remind me of my box, you know? And one person tried, actually, who I'd known for maybe a couple of months. I think I might have mentioned this person before. He wasn't a very nice person.
Yeah.
And I remember I was trying to be a more positive person, and coming from a background of like depression, being very negative. Like, this was a big step for me, just trying to be more lighthearted and smile and laugh more. And I think I'd been for a job interview or something. And the interviewer commented on how positive I seemed.
Yeah.
And I was telling this friend in air quotes, about it when I got home, and he literally laughed in my face, and he was like, "You positive, you're the least positive person I've ever met."
Wait, do I know this person?
No.
Okay.
No. This was my literally first few months in Sydney.
Yeah.
So but yeah, like, that's the only time anyone over here has tried to put me in a box, and they were also from England.
Yeah.
And it was not long after that I was like, I don't need these people in my life.
That's not somebody that you knew in England, though?
No.
Okay.
No. But I think had that same British mentality of like, you are who I deem you to be, and I'm going to remind you that that's what I think at any given opportunity, which I think is what can stop a lot of people from progressing, and why I think it's so healthy to travel and go and experience, you know, not just exposing yourself to different cultures and different mindsets, but also you then have the freedom to act and behave and try on new aspects of your personality. And again, it's not about pretending to be someone you're not. It's more like uncovering, well, who am I when no one else is around telling me who I am.
Yeah. I definitely think that's true. It's weird for me because I was such a weird kid in high school. Like, I was definitely not trying to fit in by any means. And I think that that's definitely given me this sense of pre-existing integrity. And like, I've kind of been, I guess, going it rough from the beginning and haven't really been fitting the mold. And it's been really freeing, I think, in some aspects.
Yeah.
But then it's also like put me in a separate box where now people expect me to be like to go against the grain.
Yeah.
And if I'm interested in something that's like, I guess, part of social culture and like big on social media or anything like that, if I start to show interest, it's kind of like I get a weird reception to it. Like, I don't wear makeup, but I desperately want to learn how to do makeup, and every time that I try to like bring it up, it feels like nobody takes it seriously. It feels like there's this sense of like, you don't need to know that, you don't wear it. And I'm like, okay, but I want to like feel good, and I want to learn how to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And how do you learn when you're 28 years old and you've never done it before?
YouTube, girl.
Well, yeah, so I tried YouTube when I was in high school for a while. Of course, it's definitely changed. The whole makeup scene has changed so much.
Just massively. Because I used to watch YouTube tutorials on makeup and hair quite a lot when I was a teenager.
Yeah. That was like my guilty pleasure.
But yeah, did you ever used to, like, while you were getting ready in your mirror, pretend you were...
No, I never did that.
Oh,
I was way too awkward for that, I think. Because I never thought that I'd be here in front of a camera.
Yeah, I would pretend. I would be like, so we're gonna take our round brush.
I also didn't have anything. Like, I had, like, I guess the Chemist brand drugstore makeup is so cheap.
I also did, because I, at 16, like, and I didn't come from money.
Yeah.
So, like...
Here in Sydney?
Yeah, I only stopped buying drugstore brands maybe, like, 6 or 7 years ago. Like,
I still just buy... I don't know what a good brand is. I walked into Mecca for eyeliner with Nick not even a month ago. And I was so stressed and anxious that I walked out within like 3 minutes without touching anything, because I was like, I don't know what anything. I can't go up to somebody and show them my weakness and my complete utter lack of femininity and like makeup.
You don't have a lack of... I just have to, seriously, because like...
I've said that a few times, haven't I?
Yeah, you have. And like, okay, I can understand that, again, society deems things as feminine, as like, the makeup and the hair and the heels, but like, there's so much more to being feminine than that.
Yeah.
I remember a client who I get on with really, really well, but I came in once wearing these leggings that had like lace panels in them. And she goes, oh my God, I love your leggings. And I was like, thanks. And she goes, and they're so feminine, which is really unlike you. And I was just like, like, no one has ever told me that I'm not feminine before. And although she didn't directly say that, I was a little bit like, oh, okay. And I was like, well, I guess I'm just always in my sportswear, but I'm actually really... I felt like I had to justify, no, yeah. I'm a girl. I'm very feminine. I like to wear makeup and stuff.
Yeah, I dress
up. But yeah, like for work, it's just...
Yeah. I think that I just like have been told so much that I'm not feminine. That's another box that I was put into.
That makes me sad, because I think you're incredibly feminine.
What are my feminine traits? Tell me.
What are my feminine traits? Apart from the fact that you look like a fucking Disney princess.
Because of the hair?
No, because of your face. You've got the cutest face with the big blue eyes and the lashes and the dimples, and you've just got the
Anybody at home knows that if my hair is short, I look exactly like my brothers. Which is maybe just saying that they're also feminine.
Yeah, maybe they're really pretty.
I guess.
No, I think you're very feminine.
Aww.
Yeah, because I don't class feminine as like the whole you have to be dressed up and getting your nails done, and that might be elements, just like, some masculine elements might be like going to the gym and gaining muscle for a guy, but there's still way more to being masculine than that, right? And I look at that as the same thing. Like, dressing up and the hair and the makeup and the nails and whatever, that's just like the tiniest aspect of being feminine. I think feminine is something that you embody in the way that you talk, the way that you move, the way that you interact with people. And those things I see in you, I see very feminine.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Makes me feel feminine. I feel pretty.
But I wanted to ask you a question. What was it when you were younger that made you not want to fit in? Because I think for so many of us could not relate. I could not relate to that. Like, I always wanted to fit in.
I have no idea. I think that I want to attribute it a little bit to the little, like, goblin aspect. My little rage goblin. I think that aspect of me was just so rampant and just refused to, like, conform. And there was also that sense of, like, I don't want to just be like everybody else. I remember when I was in grade school, maybe like year 6, I went to a sleepover with, like, all the girls in my class. I went to a really small school. There were 12 of us, and we did this, like, so gross, like, looking back on it, it's probably one of my, like, it feels like the ickiest thing in the world, where we rated each other.
What's that film, Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging? Did you ever see that?
Yeah, it was very, akin to that.
You gave me a 4 for my nose?
Yeah, it was exactly like that. It was so eerily similar to that, and it was just awful. And, like, a couple of girls cried, and I just felt so ick about the whole thing that from then on, I was like, why would I ever want to, like, if this is what fitting in is,
then I don't want to.
Why would I fit in?
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel, if this is what it means to have friends, like, why would I do that? I am better off just kind of not really making friends.
That's really interesting, because that ties in with something that I wanted to talk about with today's episode, is that when you do anything or say anything, and you'll always get some kind of feeling about that. It could be positive, it could be negative. But when you're behaving inauthentically, pardon me, I just had to burp. Authenticity. When you're behaving inauthentically, you will get that ick feeling, just like you got in that sleepover. And I've had many times, but I think you have to be tuned in.
Definitely.
Enough, right? You have to be self-aware enough to be like, oh, that didn't feel good. And then you've got to be courageous enough to not just say, I'm going to change this behavior, or I'm not going to do that again, but then to actually carry that out.
Yeah.
Which sometimes, might be really hard. Like, if you're part of a friend group that's really bitchy and likes to gossip all the time, and you know deep down you don't really like doing that, you don't like being mean about the other girl that's also in the group sat right in front of you, and you know that they've all been bitching about her behind her back.
Yeah.
To be the one that goes against the grain.
It's hard.
And so, excuse me, can you stop talking, because I don't want to listen to this. I don't want to, this isn't a conversation. This is just nasty.
Yeah.
And I think that's when people are so blessed to have proper friends in their life, that you can call each other out on bullshit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other person can actually be like, oh crap.
Oh, like, you're right.
That, you know. But yeah, definitely. The more I pay attention now, even if it's things that I would have brushed off before, like if I was in a bad mood and I maybe wasn't very nice to, like, I don't know, a retail worker, and I don't mean like mean, but maybe just a bit blunt, I wasn't smiley, and I just wanted to like get the interaction over with and go. Now, years ago, that would have been something that I would just not even think twice about. But when I started paying more attention, I'd go away from those situations and immediately think I could have put in more effort to be a bit nicer there. I could have done better. And I'm making that mental note of like, I don't like how this makes me feel. And so next time, even when I'm feeling really crappy, I'm going to make the effort to smile at anyone that I interact with. I'm going to make the effort to be nice and, not blunt and not kind of, not ignorant, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like...
And just brush people off.
Yeah, just brushing people off. Because it's an awful feeling to be brushed off. And I wouldn't want to give that to anyone.
It definitely is. And I think that like, noticing those things that make you feel bad is a really great way to start.
Yeah.
Figuring out what your values are.
Yeah.
And cluing into what it is that you feel is important in how you treat other people. And how you want to be treated as well.
Yes.
I think just going back to the gossiping thing, that's something that I saw a lot of when I was in high school and like within, I guess, the church, the Catholic Church, was like this sense of like, it's very common in the US and in the South where you essentially gossip about people with the pretense of it being for their benefit, of like helping them, and like
it's like shielded, like the actual intention behind it is so that you can all just have a big old bitch and a gossip, but it's under the guise of
concern, and like
concern,
we're worried about her, like how can we help, but it's really just an opportunity to like spread shit a little bit and talk about each other's stuff, and like nothing, especially in a small town as well, like nothing is...
Oh my god, sacred. You can't fart without someone hearing about it.
I know, it was just so constricting, and it really was one of the things, again, the hypocrisy of that was one of the things that put me off religion and off of Christianity, and then also drove me so crazy that I wanted to leave small town behind forever, because it just felt like that small town mentality of always gossiping and being in each other's business and kicking up a stink about this, that, and the other.
Yeah. It is interesting. I remember when I went home last year and two people come to mind, but I'm not going to name them, but almost every conversation they were just talking about other people. And it was just constant negativity, and I just remember thinking like, God, is this what you do with your time? Like, like not even in a maybe it was in a judgmental way, but just thinking like, and that was probably how I used to be as well, when I was a teenager. And who knows, if I'd stayed at home, like, maybe that would be who I'd be anyway. But I think just coming out of that mindset, and then when you witness it still going on, well, after all those years, and you kind of think, wow, like, have you not grown out of that yet? Yeah. It's interesting.
It's
very
just
interesting.
It's a weird feeling as well, going home after going.
Oh my god, it's
like,
so funny how you can, one, you obviously spot habits that you've kind of grown out of, but I've also had I remember when Dean and I went home together for the first time in 2019, and I've never hit Dean before. We don't even like play hit each other.
Yeah.
But when I was a teenager, like, that was quite normal. You'd hit your boy, you just smack them like that, or your friends or my brothers.
Yeah.
And we went home when we were around his area. Obviously, everything was normal, and then we traveled to where my family lived, and I was around my brothers and in my house, and I kept hitting Dean. You know, if he said something like sarcastic or whatever, I'd be like, oh, shut up, and I'd hit him. And after a few times, he was like, why do you keep hitting me? And I was like, I don't know, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I was like, it's just like this old behavior that's just randomly come back out.
Yeah. It's so weird the way that, and it's so much harder as well to stick to like newfound integrity when you're faced with situations like that and faced with kind of that.
Being put back in old environments.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what it is. It's old environments, and it's like, okay, how strong are your new value systems and new habits and new ways of thinking? Are they strong enough to not be pervaded by your old way of doing things? Especially if you've got people that still trigger you, which, you know, family's like the number one cause for that.
Yeah. It just reminds me so much, like, the last couple of times that I've gone home, it's been while I haven't been drinking. And that has been like the one thing that's changed that has, I guess, been the tester for like some of this integrity. And I know I love my family so much. We drink a lot. We're quite good at drinking.
Well, you are Irish, so.
And Catholic, so it's the two things, the Irish Catholic raising. So going home and not drinking, it felt like I wasn't like participating in that old ritual and in that that mentality, which felt great. But I realized as well that I still am so quick to like my temper sparks so quick and easy. And my dad and I are so similar, and we can rile each other up like nobody's business. Like, we are so good at bringing out the worst in each other sometimes, because we've got very different political views. And growing up with different political views than your parents, I guess, takes a bit of integrity in itself. And to have liberal views in a small town, a very conservative town, was also like another level of that. And I was always like, I would arc up at the littlest thing growing up. And the last 2 times that I went home, I noticed it much more the first time that I was doing it. And the second time I like actively tried to change it. And I was working with my therapist the second time to like really kind of not respond that way. And the difference of just noticing it is massive. And to be aware of like the things that are, I guess, triggering that old response.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is difficult. It's challenging.
Yeah.
But I think the more that you practice this just throughout your daily life, I mean, obviously for people like us who live or, you know, come from a different country, it is quite the change getting dropped back into your old home, your family systems, you know, being around those people that, although you might have regular contact with, you're not actually physically around them for years sometimes at a time. So that's quite a unique situation, I think, to people who, or, I mean, you know, people who don't see their family very often anyway, you know, who maybe live close enough but only see them.
But I think that makes us lucky as well. Like, getting that opportunity to leave has given us that opportunity to build stronger integrity. People who live near their family and who maybe are experiencing some of the similar things that we do probably find it much more difficult.
And have to face their family on a daily basis. I mean, I do have a friend who, although, you know, her family is overseas, it's her relationship with her mother she struggles with the most, and still gets riled by her mum, and it's something that she's really trying to work on and has been for the last few, you know, years, I think, because it's just that bad that anytime they're kind of in contact, it can result in an argument and stuff. So yeah, I mean, obviously everyone's relationship with their family is different, and whether you live close or live far, like family, loved ones, you know, siblings, maybe even your partner, depending on what kind of relationship you've got, like they are the most triggering because you know each other the most. And have for a long time, you know.
And spend the most time with them.
Yes. And I think at times we can fall back into these habits so easily because particularly when it's coming from yourself and like you're the one displaying the not so appealing way of being, because you know you'll be forgiven, because you know it's your family and you can almost like, you know, get away with it. Like, my mum will be fine if I'm being shitty with her. Like, she knows I don't really mean it. But I think that's really important to address and to actually take ownership of that. And, you know, I say to my mum now when she comes out to visit, now I love my mum deeply. We have a fantastic relationship. She's my best friend. But of course, I still have days where she annoys me. She's my mum, like she annoys me. But now I'm really good at, like, if I've been shitty with her, you know, owning up to that and being like, hey, I'm really sorry that I was short with you earlier. You know, I'm just feeling like stressed or tired, and I'll actually apologize for it. Whereas all throughout my teen years, it was just a given that she would forgive me and love me because she's my mum, and I never really, you know, said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be, you know, speaking to you that way. Or
I think also there's an element of it being like, those are the people that you care about the most in a lot of instances. And like, if you hold yourself to a certain standard and they're not meeting that standard, like lashing out a little bit at them, and the ease there is to just kind of get angry if they're not seeing things the way that you see things, or if they're, I guess, being petty in some way and like kind of sniping back. It can feel very much sometimes like you're like fighting for them to also have the same integrity that you do, or the same point of view that you have. And that's definitely not the healthy way to go about it. That doesn't win arguments.
Well, that's it, right? Like it shouldn't be about winning. And I think that's where we've gone wrong a lot with communicating with each other, is that we're trying to get our point across and getting so riled up the fact that the other person can't see our point when it's the exact same thing for them. It's just this like butting heads of two people who are trying to change the other person's mind, and neither will be instead of listening and just being open. And I think, you know, you have much more productive conversations where you are actually willing to step outside of your own perspective. So, okay, I have my morals and my values. I stick to them in an authentic way, but also willing to have my opinions challenged. Also willing to step outside of myself and look at things from different perspectives and go, okay, if I could be in this person's mind, can I see why they would think that way? Yes, I can. Has that changed my opinion? Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't, but at least I've actually taken the effort to try and do that, rather than just being like, well, no, I'm not going to try and put myself in their shoes because they're wrong.
I think I really struggle with that so much because I hate being wrong. And I don't like my values being challenged. I don't like my perspective being challenged. Not because I think that I'll change, but because I feel so passionately about it that I just want the other person to see that I'm obviously right. And can't like get past this sense of like injustice that they believe differently or that they think differently.
Yeah, it is. It's really challenging. And I had my best example of this for myself was with my old neighbour who I became really good friends with. And we love having deep conversations and chats about so many things. And I brought up the Roe versus Wade situation. And to my absolute surprise, she was against abortion and she actually thought that it was a good thing. And I was really taken aback, and this was the first time that I very, very deeply had to like settle the rage inside me and be like, okay, this is someone who I love, I trust, they're a very well-rounded individual, and I really had to sit there and have an open conversation and share both of our views and know that neither of us were trying to change the other person's mind. We were just discussing why we thought the way that we did.
Yeah.
And I think it was one of the first times that, like you, over something that I was very passionate about, I managed to be okay with hearing her side of things, even though I might strongly disagree with them myself. Yeah. And it not affecting my opinion of her or changing my opinion of her. In fact, I think I felt more respect between us for being able to have that open discussion and share each other's views on something that I felt very, very strongly about. So it is absolutely not easy, particularly when it's the stuff that you're really passionate about.
Yeah. And I think I'm also just a product of growing up in the US, where like it's such a wide divide and it's all such inflammatory discussion like that.
But it's very inflammatory.
In uni, I was in a social justice class, which is comprised mostly of people who were liberal and who had like very like strong liberal leanings, and the whole point was just to like discuss social like areas of social injustice and kind of like work through like I guess work on feasible ways that we could put into practice some like social justice practices within our community. And even in a relatively liberal setting, there was divide, and there were like classes that had to be disrupted and had to end early or had to be put on like a long temporary hold so everybody could just calm down. Yeah. Because the teacher was like, y'all are getting so fired up and I love that you're all passionate, but like this is not productive. Yeah. And it's not going to get us anywhere if we're just screaming at each other about how the other person's wrong.
Well, exactly. Yeah. It isn't productive, and you can scream until you're blue in the face if they're not willing to have their mind changed. Yeah. Then you're not going to change. You could have the most bulletproof argument ever. Yeah. Like we've seen that doesn't matter. Yeah. I mean, look at conspiracy theorists, for example. Like they don't care. Yeah. And I say this as a kind of a conspiracy theorist myself, you know, like what I've come to, I guess, my conclusion with a lot of things in life is that there actually is no answer to anything. You know, there's a concept that we've made up because so much of the world is subjective. Yeah. We don't, you know, outside of organized religion, we don't have a rule book. Yeah. And it's always going to be about what the majority deems acceptable and what the majority, you know, it's like about all the flat earthers, and there's tons of science that the earth is round, but I'm not a scientist. Like, I can't actually prove that any of that science is right. It could all be bullshit. I don't know. Yeah. So maybe the earth is round, maybe it's flat. At the end of the day, I'm not going to drive myself insane trying to get an answer that I'll probably never get. Yeah.
Or trying to convince somebody.
Or trying to convince somebody of, you know, I think it's very important, especially in today's day and age, to be open to things, even things that sound crazy, like the earth being flat, or whether it's someone else's opinion on abortion. Like, I think by being closed-minded and being so stuck in one way of thinking and in one opinion, I think you close yourself off to true wisdom, because I think true wisdom is knowing that you know nothing. You know, you don't ever truly know for fact anything. It's all open to interpretation. It doesn't mean you can't form opinions, and it doesn't mean you can't say, well, this is what I think and I believe, but I don't know that. Yeah,
it's really interesting, I think, with situations of arguing a point and only having your subjective perspective, because like everybody is making these decisions based off of their lived experience, and everybody is justifying their beliefs because of some element of their lived experience.
Yes.
In most instances. And sometimes that's the environment that you grow up in. Sometimes that's like one thing that somebody says to you in passing that just changes your mindset. And it could be like a myriad of things. Like I think that part of the reason that I became so liberal, even though I was surrounded by very conservative thought, is that I read a lot. And I was always reading, always like had that desire for more knowledge and more different perspectives, and saw injustice in a lot of like hypocritical behavior when I was in high school, and it led me towards this sense of like, I guess, questioning everything that I was being taught and told. And really like going on this journey of like self-realization and figuring out what it is that I value and what it is that I believe as well, and like where all of my core beliefs kind of come from. Is that journey of figuring out who I am and what I believe. And why I didn't feel right about some conservative policy. And why I didn't feel right about some Christian teaching or the way that the church kind of behaved itself in the area that I grew up.
That's it. And it's going on that journey, and I don't think that journey ever ends, or it shouldn't ever end, because again, like once you get to a point where like I can say that I'm firm in my beliefs and my values now. You know, I'm about to turn 28 years old, and just have a little spill
everywhere. It's like it's the first time I drank tea. It's a sign I should go back to coffee. Just kidding.
Any excuse. You were just waiting.
Just one small misstep.
Yeah, you know, like I'm about to turn 28. I'd say, you know, since the age of probably like 16, I've been on this real journey of self-discovery of like, you know, who am I currently? Who do I want to be? What am I embodying? What am I actually presenting out into the world? And does that align with who I want to be? And there's no way that will ever stop. You know, whether I'm 50 or 70, I think I'll get more and more sure about those things, but I would like to think that I can always get even truer to myself. I can always embody even more the picture of who I think I am in my purest form. And that's my goal with that. But yeah, it's as we've spoke about with many other things on this podcast, it's all about that unlayering and unpacking and yeah, like putting things into practice. And it could be something as small and simple as, you know, making sure that you're always kind to retail workers, even when you're not in a good mood, even if they're not doing a good job, like whatever. To when somebody triggers you deeply, like your behavior and your reaction in that moment. Because that's when we really need it, you know, for big change, and particularly in regards to being in a relationship or in a friendship or, you know, family relationships, whatever it is, where we have that potential for beautiful change and being able to understand each other and communicate on deep levels, that cannot come without calm.
Yeah.
You know, and the inflammation is still part of the process. It might be all the years of shouting for then when one person finally decides to behave more calmly, that the other person is in the back of their mind thinking, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God. This is all I've wanted to.
Yeah.
You know.
Finally we can stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I think our life partners are our biggest teachers. Because, you know, I mean, obviously, again, everyone's relationship is different, but, you know, me and my partner are very close. We spend a lot of time together.
Yeah.
And we have pissed each other off a bunch of times.
Can I ask, what was the last thing you and Dean fought about? Or even like bickered about? Do you consider them the same? Do you consider fighting and bickering the same?
No, okay. I don't. And also, I'm struggling because we we have done so well in building healthy communication with each other that I can't remember the last time that we really bickered. The last time we had any kind of friction about something was I was expressing to Dean that, you know, I was upset, a bit lost with, you know, like my business and the move and the fact that he doesn't want us to buy a house to live in for like another 10 years because we've got to get all these investment properties first, and he's got this big financial plan for us. And you know, I was talking about the instability of renting and how that was making me feel, and that I'd kind of put marketing my business on hold when we found out we had to move, because I thought, oh, we'll be gone in a few weeks, but it ended up being more than 2 months. And so I was basically saying, like, I don't know what to do. We hadn't found our new place yet. And I was like, we could be here for another 6 months, and then I've wasted all of this time not marketing and not getting in new clients. And he was just like, well, you have two decisions. You can either market or you don't market. And I was just like, that's really not helpful. And he goes, well, I don't understand why you're like going over this. And I ended up walking out of the room, and we talked about it afterwards. And he was like, why did you just walk out? Because that's not something we really condone in our relationship when you're in the middle of a conversation. Because I didn't even say, I'm going to leave and come back to this. I just walked out because I was like angry. And I just explained to him that, you know, sometimes you come at things really logically, and you're more of a logical person, I'm more of an emotional person. But, you know, like sometimes I'm just needing your support, and I just need you to like give me a hug and tell me that you hear me. And, you know, maybe, I'm not saying change who you are, so maybe you still offer your logical advice for me, but when you just throw it out that like so bluntly when I'm clearly upset and in need of some care, you know, it doesn't make me feel very supported. So I said, I'm not angry with you, but I'm just letting you know that like that's how I'm feeling in that situation, and I'm at a more vulnerable state, and I need you to kind of like step into my mindset and be a little bit more emotional when I'm in need. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just curious. Like, it's so, Nick and I, we're good at disagreeing. We weren't when we started dating, because I was inflammatory.
You guys have been together for how long?
almost 10 years. Yeah. October's going to be 10 years for us. Yeah. I know, it's so cute. But we have gotten very good at disagreeing and on kind of handling that situation quite well. The last time that I think we had a poor example of that, well, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting that we've like taken this idea of integrity so seriously within our relationship and really kind of like stuck to making sure that our respect for each other is front of mind.
Yeah.
When we have disagreements.
Yeah. And it does take time to get there. Yeah. Like, I remember when Dean and I moved into our second place, so this would have been maybe 4.5 years ago or something, and we were moving this heavy table out. We had to like, we couldn't take it through the back door into the back garden, which is where we wanted to put it. So we had to take it out the front and round down the side alley to then take it through the gate. And I would get frustrated, you know, carrying heavy furniture and like needing to put things down, or you're trying to get it through a doorway or whatever. And I think I was probably being a bit of a bitch and just getting frustrated with Dean, and I kept shouting at him. And he'd said, you know, like, if you shout at me one more time, like, I'm going to go back inside. And then I did. And so we're on the street in front of the house holding the table, and he just drops the table and walks away from me. And I was so angry, and I dragged this table all by myself down the alleyway, tried to get it through the gate. It got stuck halfway, so I had to like climb over the table to get back inside. And that was like a really good example. And we didn't properly address that situation until months later.
Yeah.
We just kind of brushed that one under the carpet and dealt with it at another time, probably when we were arguing about another thing, and then that came up.
Yeah.
So that's just one example of the many times we've had a breakdown in communication because one or both of us has let our emotions get the better of us, and the other person has also reacted poorly, and it's a whole mixing pot for yeah. But I think and this is another reason why it's so important to know your values and hold it, you know, maintaining integrity, is because when you are interacting with other people, like, one of you has to start that, you know, and then hopefully in a relationship or friendship, whatever it is, somewhere where you're in close proximity with someone, colleague, boss, whatever, there's got to be that level of commitment there from two people to both uphold that, because neither of you are going to be perfect. Neither of you are going to do it every time.
Absolutely.
Sometimes, like, you'll both fail at the same time, but at least now you've got two in one, right? Like, someone is going to do better, or you might both do better. And it's through practicing that and kind of almost holding each other more accountable. Definitely. It gets easier.
100%. What do you feel are like your top 3 values?
Something that I practice on upholding on a daily basis is not judging people. And what's really interesting is that when I am maybe not doing the best, like in terms of mental health, and I've become more judgmental of myself, I find that I get many more judgmental thoughts about other people. And this is something I've just realized recently in the last few months. It's almost like a massive indicator that I'm actually judging myself a lot.
Yeah.
And I find that through, either or, like being less judgmental towards myself makes me less judgmental towards other people, or reminding myself not to judge others makes me a lot kinder to myself as well. So that would be my major one.
Yeah.
My second one would probably be like knowing my worth.
Yeah.
So like the respect that I give to myself. Like for example, I always had, and so that's like, no matter what. So, and of course I've failed at that 3 times in my life, but something that I held very, very highly about myself is that, I was never going to like stay with someone who cheated on me, and I was never going to knowingly be with anyone else who was in a relationship. And I met this guy at a party, and oh my gosh, he was so good looking and like had a lot of money, and he was telling me, this was back when I was maybe like 19.
Yeah.
And he was a little bit older than me, and he was telling me at this time I was really struggling financially, and so he just gave me thousands of dollars in cash.
Oh my.
I know, and I was like, I can't take this money. And he's like, no, you can have it. Da, 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 da. He goes, that's nothing to me. That's like pocket, money, whatever. And he just would not let me give this money back. But then I found out, so we'd been flirting all night and whatever. And then I basically found out that he was married and had 2 children, and he essentially wanted me to become his girlfriend.
Yeah. And
I was just like, no way, and I was like, please take the money back. I don't want it. I'm not going to do that. And he's like, no, keep the money. But he goes, just think about it. Like, here's my number. And I was like, I'm not going to take your number. And this went on for like another hour and a half, right? Everyone else is around drinking and having a good time, and he's essentially trying to convince me to stay the night. And I'm not going to lie, like part of me was like, my life would be so much easier having someone to just like take care of me financially. He was very handsome. He was very charming. And part of me was tempted. Part of me was really tempted, but I didn't do it. And because I was like, I have spent my entire life bagging out people who cheat and having like a disgusting opinion of them. I don't anymore, by the way. Like I've let go of that judgment.
Judging, yeah.
But back then that was something that was really big for me. Like if you were a cheater, you were disgusting. And the fact that I even considered it made me go, maybe I'm not as moral as I think.
Yeah.
And the fact that like it was kind of hard to say no, because like a big part of me, I wanted to make my life easier, and here I had some like handsome guy saying that he'll pay all of my bills and I'll never have to worry about anything again. But I was like, I can't do it, because that would be so untrue to myself, and I don't think I could live with myself for doing that. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't respect myself anymore. Yeah. So that's my number 2, is that like making decisions that withhold like respect to me. And I can't think of a third one right now, so I'm just gonna ask you.
Respect is one of mine as well. It's also my number 2. I think that's respect for others, treating everybody like a human being, like somebody that is going through something that I have no idea of, even if I know them intimately. So even my partner, even my family, my best friend, you, like showing respect and trusting that there's probably something deeper going on if there's somebody lashing out at me is really important to me. And I am not always perfect, and I always feel so much shame when I don't hold myself to that standard, and when I'm not respectful of others, but then also like expecting that same level of respect for myself. And if somebody's not respecting me, I guess putting up a boundary, not treating them disrespectfully. I don't want to do what they do back, but just like making sure that I am at the very least not kind of just taking it and not like subjecting myself to disrespect. So having that hard line for respecting others and then also being respected. And then I think that my number one is probably forgiveness and like being quick to forgive as a value, which is a very Christian value. And I think that's part of kind of being raised Christian, is that like there's the belief that nothing is unforgivable, and that if God can forgive you, then who are we as flawed human beings who make mistakes to not forgive others? And I do definitely struggle with it. But I have reached a place, I think, where there's not anybody that I haven't forgiven. And so, and like, there's definitely been pretty heavy wrong against me in the past, but I'm not, and I held on to some stuff for a very long time, like a decade plus, from when I was in high school. But yeah, I think I've really come to value forgiveness on a deep level.
Yeah.
And to be as quick to forgive as possible, because you can never know when that person will be gone, or if that person won't be there anymore, or what that person again is going through. If they need that olive branch. So I try really hard to be a forgiving person.
Yeah. I think that's a great one, and ties in with the, I think, not judging others, because it's definitely, when you look at the state of some, the world, and like some of the people that have done so wrong in the world, there's reasons for that, and no matter how heinous the crime, and of course we know that it can be almost unthinkable to put yourself in that kind of person's shoes and understand why they've done what they've done. But it's true, like I don't think any of us are born evil. I think we're born with holding on to a lot of karma in terms of like negative energy that we've accrued again in previous life. So this obviously comes from my belief in reincarnation. And being stuck in cycles like that. But I just don't believe that anyone is born innately evil and with the intention to do harm in the world. And it's through the lack of forgiveness that we've had over all these hundreds of years that makes it very difficult for people to reform and to be better and to want to change, because it's easier when you're hated to keep being bad. It's easier to go, well, the world doesn't understand me, society will never it's like that almost typical cartoon villain backstory, right? Of like, then
nobody understands
me, so I'm gonna get a secret layer and create some evil pieces of equipment to tear the world down because I'm angry at the world for not accepting me. So I think forgiveness is definitely something that we all need to get better at, and it's not easy. It's not easy, but you look at these like prison reformation schemes, where and again, a lot of this probably came from the fact that the prisons were getting so overrun that people had to start thinking, okay, how do we stop so many people from getting arrested, and then realizing that so many people were multiple time offenders because the world didn't let them be anything else. So they just went back to their life of crime because no one would hire them, no one would, you know, give them a second chance.
And that's what they knew, and maybe they had gang families that were the only people who would accept them back in.
Yeah, and when they started bringing in all these different ways to reform prisoners, it's had incredibly positive results.
Yeah.
Both while they're still there and also when they do get let out to continue on their lives. So I think that's a prime example, you know, and that's obviously an extreme where like someone's done something and broken the law and gotten arrested, but like what about someone who's just a bit of a dick?
Yeah.
Right? And people are just like, oh my god, you're such a dick, and like all this guy gets told is how much of a dick he is. Now, okay, he's displaying a lot of dickish behaviour, but if someone actually sat down and said, you know what, I don't think you're a bad guy. I think you've maybe got some warped opinions.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that comes from. But I can see in you, I can see that there's more to the story, and there's more than that. And if you ever want to talk about it, you know, let me know. Imagine if you had someone come up and say that to you when all you've heard all your life is like, oh my god, you're such an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, just fuck off and leave me alone. Like, I don't want to be around you. Imagine if you had a terrible relationship with your family, you know, you didn't really have any decent friends, and anyone decent who you spoke to just didn't want to be around you. Imagine how different that would be if somebody actually took the time to see you.
That would make a world of difference. I do also want to like caveat though that in being forgiving towards others and in opening that kind of door and extending that olive branch to people, you do still have to be so careful about not letting that person take advantage of your forgiveness.
Of course.
And like leech that energy from you and like take you up on that offer to like talk about what's going wrong and then become that person who just like gossips and talks negatively and drags you down. Like there still has to be barriers to protect yourself within that.
I agree.
And to still hold yourself to a high standard.
Well, exactly, because I think the more you know yourself, and again, the more courage you have to speak your truth, regardless of whether you think that that's going to make someone feel uncomfortable or upset them, you know. It's like, I remember I've never thought racist jokes were funny.
Yeah.
Which in today's, you know, today, like, people go, well, of course, that's not funny. But back when I was a teenager, like, that it was still very prevalent that racist jokes were being made and people were laughing at them.
Same with, like, gay jokes.
Yeah. And when you're the person who doesn't laugh and there's 5 other people that all think it's hilarious...
Yeah.
And someone turns to you and you go, what, don't you think that's funny? And you have the courage to be like, no, I don't. And they go, well, you know, you're a loser or whatever. And it's like, okay, I'm a loser. I don't care. Yeah. That's not funny. And it's through more and more people doing that the people who told the racist jokes became the losers.
Yeah. And that's how we came to be a society that had more integrity about that.
Yes. Yeah. So I think it's through knowing yourself, having the courage to do the hard things and the uncomfortable things, because who you are and who you want to be seen as by society is more important to you than fitting in or making anyone else feel comfortable about the joke that they've just made. It's that times, you know, however many billion people are on this planet, that really creates change in the world.
Yeah.
And makes that whole, okay, well, the collective says this isn't okay, so we're not going to do that anymore.
Yeah.
But it was only, a few 100 years ago that racism was huge.
Yeah.
And we had slaves, and you know, like what an awful time to be alive if you were not white.
Yeah.
So and look at society now. It's almost difficult to imagine it any other way, because it's all although I, you know, definitely not experienced racism, but saw and heard so much racism from my childhood, like 24 years later, that's not acceptable anywhere that I live or spend time in.
I do think that it's definitely not perfect, and there's been a shift towards more subtle racism and little ways of I don't remember what the term's called. Just it's like not inflammatory racism, but it's just kind of like very subtle and
I know there's a term for it, and I can't think what it is.
And I feel like a terrible ally.
But yeah, it's almost like God, I wish I could remember the term. But yeah,
it's like ingrained in little things
under a guise, right? Like
it's like it's hidden under
hidden racism,
whatever
kind
of thing is it's pretending it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like we're far from things being as they should be, where everyone is accepted as a human being, regardless of race or religion or gender.
Yeah.
We're still very far from that, I know. But if you think about, I guess, even in the last 10 years, the progress across those borders has been huge, I think. But I'm very aware that, you know, like I'm white and I live in Sydney, and you know, I can't remember the last time I saw something like that happen.
Yeah.
When I was a kid living in Manchester in the UK, it was probably every day of my life. I saw someone saying or doing something against Muslim people.
Yeah.
So going from that to where I am now makes me think, well, there's got to have been a good amount of progress.
Yeah.
It's not enough. I'm not saying it's enough, but
it's one of those things that gives you hope.
Yeah. Like, and I like to spend time envisioning a world where race doesn't matter. You know, I love it when they make series and stuff that are set in like, you know, period times.
Are you talking about Bridgerton?
Maybe. I love Bridgerton. But yeah, it's like, you know, that's not a thing. I think probably still in Bridgerton, it's probably not seen as acceptable to be gay, because that's the stuff going on in Bridgerton there that's being hidden away like that.
Yeah.
But there's obviously families of different ethnicities, and it's never spoken about. So it's obviously like in this period that we know, black people would not have been in any position of power.
Yeah.
But in Bridgerton, like, race is never mentioned. So no one is of a lower class because of their race. They're just of a lower class or a higher class.
Yeah. And you can shift classes without it being like a big shock if you're
it's all about money. It was all about money.
Just
you know,
money.
the queen is black, like and a woman. So I love watching things like that, because it kind of makes you go like, oh, this is what the world would have been like if racism was never a thing.
Yeah.
You know, it would still have all been about money and power and, you know, stuff like that, but race wouldn't have been a factor. And so I like imagining that future. I like to spend time imagining what I would like the world to look like, instead of thinking about all the ways that it's not like that.
Yeah. I still struggle with that. But I do take your point, and I see that there's definitely been a lot of progress. in the world, just in general. And I believe that we'll continue to make progress.
We will. I know it. What did I say before? True wisdom is never knowing anything.
Yeah, true. So. This knowledge of yours. The forbidden knowledge.
The forbidden knowledge. Okay, well, I think we talked a lot about integrity.
Yeah, I think we kept bringing it back around to integrity.
We did. We kept bringing it around.
It was all very close to accurate. We hardly went off on any tangents.
Yeah.
I think we did well. This might have been, y'all, this is a great season finale.
Oh yeah, it's our last episode.
Finally got it right. Minimal tangents.
Yeah. Yeah, so quick recap, I guess, is just that I think doing all of this work, focusing on knowing what your values, morals, ethics, integrity, about whatever, knowing all of that about yourself and putting it into practice. As we've said, it's not about being perfect. It's not about getting it right every time. You, in fact, absolutely won't get it right every time. Yeah. Otherwise, you wouldn't be having to do any of this anyway.
Yeah.
So, but I think when you uphold yourself to those standards, your word and your actions mean something so much more, not just to the people around you, but to yourself. And I think something that goes hand in hand with authenticity is respect for self. And if you're someone who does not hold your actions and your words to the values that you have in your heart, then I think it's very hard to have true respect for yourself. And I think that can be very damaging to the soul.
Yeah.
So enjoy your journeys, and I wish you all the best on them.
Yeah, we wish you, I guess, great respect for yourself, and that you're able to come to that place of respect for self if you're not already there.
Yeah, and own up to it when you don't. Doesn't have to necessarily be to other people, although I do think that's a great place to be when you can do that.
That helps for accountability a lot.
Yes, but at the very least, own up to yourself and have that thought in your head and go, that what I just didn't feel good. It's not serving me. That's not who I want to be. And I now choose to change that.
Yeah. And show yourself grace as well when you're kind of catching yourself out. Don't be harsh to yourself. You don't need to be self-judgmental.
No.
Because we all fuck up. We all make mistakes.
Yeah. And that's also damaging as well, right? It's like judging yourself. Something I practice often is, let's take in traffic, for example, if I have an angry thought towards someone and I now immediately forgive myself for having that thought, and I go, that's okay, but I'm going to let that go now and I'm going to do better next time. So yeah, I think practicing forgiveness
practicing
for self and others.
Yeah
Fantastic. Well, what a beautiful episode to end the season on. I think.
Very uplifting, very heartening. I'm happy we talked about this today.
Yeah,
I'm happy we landed on this topic. And like we mentioned last episode, we will have roughly 6 weeks off without an upload. So if you're behind, you're not hearing this, but maybe
if you're behind, you might be hearing season 2 next week. It
might not matter if you're super behind, but if you are behind, this is a great opportunity to catch up. You're coming to the right place at the right time.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's been amazing. What a wonderful 12 weeks.
Yeah. Thank you guys for journeying with us. Thank you for coming along on this authenticity journey. And kind of experiment with us figuring out how to podcast and figuring out how to do stuff. And obviously we're still learning, but we're really grateful and really happy to have you.
Yes, and happy to be here.
Yeah.
We're very excited for season 2. We've got some great new developments coming for you guys. Please let us know if there's anything that you would like to see or hear, or if you want to give us some constructive feedback, that would be fabulous. Just drop us a comment below or send us an email at livingyal.
That's livingyal@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram and Facebook. And follow us on YouTube.
Yes.
Watch this. I make so many funny faces. It's great.
All right, guys, thank you. We love you, and we will see you next season.
Bye.
Oh.